everyone who's joined. For those of you who don't know us, which I'm sure most of you do, a brief overview of Goodwill is that we have had over 25 years of experience helping more than 2,000 businesses from a variety of industries grow or scale in the UK. And we help our customers understand the complexities of UK business culture. We predominantly service 5 areas. So most of you will be familiar with this, but if not, of course, Helen and I are here from HR today. We also have payroll, we have finance, we have governance and virtual office. And for all of the areas in between, we do have strategic alliances as well. So if there's anything help that you do need, do reach out and ask. As I mentioned, Helen and I are here from HR. I am the department head, and Helen is senior HR advisor. If we can just move the slides on, please, Nancy. Yeah. So we'll be covering a few topics today. First off, of course, it's all around wellbeing. So employer responsibilities in terms of wellbeing. We'll also be talking about wellbeing KPIs, which might be something that some of you may not be overly familiar with. And also we'll be talking about how to spot mental health issues in the workplace, how to improve mental health or minimize mental illness in the workplace, and then also what mental health strategies big companies are adopting and maybe what SMEs can be doing to follow suit. So without further ado, I will hand off to Helen.
Thanks, Jacqui. First up, I'm going to be talking about what is employee wellbeing. So no one wants stresses or unhealthy, unhappy staff that then don't engage well or perform well in their roles. Employee wellbeing is a multi-dimensional. It consists of lots of different facets. So that could be including psychological, physical, and social aspects. So it's really important to think about an integrated approach to employee health and well-being, so that can promote higher levels of engagement, higher levels of productivity, while fostering a good organisational culture and commitment. And as we all know, we journey through life and there's lots of different life and work events that happen. So you might start or grow a family, and you might be experiencing the menopause or perimenopause. You might become a carer. So for example, for a child or an older person, you might be experiencing bereavement. There might be financial pressures and also addiction. So that could be drugs, alcohol, gambling. So there's lots of different things that happen in lots of different people's lives. So next, we're going to look at why should we focus on this. So next, second part of this slide. Sorry, if we could just jump back. Thanks. As you're fully aware, the pandemic really highlighted to lots of businesses the duty of care that you have as employers to companies and to your employees. And I think it really made people and employees look at what care and duty of care companies are taking on board, and how they're feeling during the pandemic, I think, has changed things significantly over the last few years. There's also financial benefits of doing this, the bottom line. So we're looking at significantly higher sick rates recently. So the latest statistics from the Office of National Statistics look at an increase of over 14,000 claimants of those being on sick. That's month-on-month increase. So on a yearly basis, that's 1.579 million claimants that we're looking at. So there's a significant increase that's been a trend over the last recent years of those being on sick or long-term sick. So it does have a hit on the bottom line, and looking at increasing or reducing absences as much as possible and supporting your employees through those periods of absences that they might be having. The next thing I want to talk about is employees being supported. So employees are more likely to stay within your company or any organisation and perform well if they feel supported throughout the life cycle that they're going through with you as a company, but also personally as well. We've already touched on the impact that the pandemic has had, but also companies have a moral duty. So you should take care of your employees, and we should be taking care of each other. And Jacqui will cover some of the other kind of legislation pieces that you should be looking at as a company, but also what's your moral duty to your employees. Lots of the themes that we're going to talk about today are about cultural shifts. So employees do expect more from companies. They might have more of a social conscience from the company perspective, but also from the employee themselves. And all of these things tie in to attract and retain employees. So you're more likely to keep employees, and it's a big attraction piece as well for bringing people on board. Presenteeism is still a big risk. So there's been a fair amount in the press recently about people working while they are unwell. And this trend has tended to be increased whilst we've had an increase of working from home or hybrid working. So employees might not be well enough to come into the office, but they are well enough to work from home. So that's something to really look at and consider. And with all of these things, it is really an evolving landscape. So there are social changes, there's growing increased interest in women's health. We're becoming generally more open about mental health across the board, not just in the workplace. So it is an ever-evolving landscape, and things will develop and change over time. Next, I'm going to pass back to Jacqui for the next slide.
Thanks, Helen. So as Helen said, I will be talking more about the legal responsibilities. So employees do have a wide range of legal rights protecting their mental health within the workplace. So there is a common law of duty of care on all employers, for the safety of their employees. But there are also two pieces of legislation which you should be interested in. So that is the Health and Safety at Work Act of 1974 and the Management of Health and Safety at Work Regulations of 1999. So employers have both a common law and general legal obligation to ensure the health and safety of their employees at work and to provide a safe working environment for their employees. But that also extends to when the employee is working from home. So just so that you're aware, breaching this legislation doesn't create direct rights for employees to sue their employers for compensation, but it can be used as evidence in a personal injury case to prove a breach of the common law duty of care. So just something to be aware of, that ultimately this could still cost you money. But, as mentioned, I was going to talk about mental health. So if an employee has a mental health issue, it must be taken just as seriously when we think about this common law protection and also legislation protection. Most mental health conditions are also likely to satisfy the legal definition of disability under the Equality Act of 2010. So this means that those with mental health conditions are likely to be protected from disability discrimination, and they would be entitled to reasonable adjustments from their employer. So bearing in mind all of these things, it is vital that you as an employer know how to spot the signs of things like stress and anxiety and depression or any other mental health issue. And equally, that your line managers and supervisors, who are the ones on the front line managing those employees, need to be clear on what to look out for and what actions that they need to take. Specifically, if we think about workplace stress, there are some guidelines under the Health and Safety Executive in the UK. So they have produced a set of management standards and guidelines on work-related stress, which aim to demonstrate best practice on how to deal with stress in the workplace. And of course, there is a difference between stress and pressure. So when we talk about pressure, we may experience this frequently, but it can sometimes be motivational for some people. But when we think about excessive pressure, and not having the ability to recover from that pressure, then this can feel too much and we feel like we can't cope. And I think that most people can maybe feel empathy for that at some point in their life. But we hear this terminology of employee burnout a lot. And we need to really be thinking about employee well-being in context to burnout. So, if you aren't considering your employees' well-being, which includes workplace stress, then this can lead to employee burnout. And that means that you might see a decline in motivation and productivity, as well as a lack of job satisfaction in your employees. You might see that employees are struggling with emotional and physical exhaustion, but then that you will likely see an increase in sickness absences and maybe even resignations. And all of that should be important to you as a business because those things cost you money, right? But we will look at some symptoms of employee burnout a little bit later. We are going to be looking at some specific initiatives that you can try and incorporate to support positive employee well-being. But in terms of what you need to do as a responsible employer, you need to look at specific mental health practices, putting policies in place that are actually followed. You need to think about what reasonable adjustments that you may need to make as well, which are always going to be specific to the individual. So there's not going to be one size fits all when it comes to that. But things that you could consider would be allowing flexible working, amending the employee's workload, looking at phased return to work when people have maybe been off sick, or providing paid time off for counselling. You could also organise health and wellness programmes if you have the budget to do that. But check in with your employees regularly. That's something that you can do for free. Every company has the ability to do that. Your employees should feel that they are able to communicate openly and in a safe space. And also you need to address any discrimination on the grounds of mental health and encourage staff to report if they are receiving any disfavourable behaviours from other staff members or their managers. We can just look at the next slide, please. Excuse me. So I mentioned wellbeing KPIs. You can see the chart on the screen. You will receive a copy of these slides after the meeting, so that you'll be able to look at that a bit more closely. But you can see the chart on the screen, hopefully. So as the chart shows, there are 3 key areas which are important to employee wellbeing. So we have social, physical, and wellbeing, which are the 3 main categories. The key reason is focusing on your employees' wellness and well-being. So, we need to look at employee engagement, and that's, ultimately what this boils towards. A well organization has well employees. And if you focus on well-being, it has a significant impact on your employees. It generally leads to better business outcomes for your company. And really, we need to appreciate that physical and mental health can't always be separated. So when we look at well-being in the workplace, or when we're measuring well-being in the workplace, we need to look at the whole person. We need to take a holistic approach as to what needs are to be met. So you might be wondering what well-being KPIs are. And effectively, this measures how positive someone feels, that they'll be able to accomplish a goal and feel good about that goal. And also your employee contributions plus their satisfaction in making that contribution. So effectively, managing to capture how happy your employees are, and that can help you identify what's impacting them positively and negatively and how you can address that as a business. So some things that you could do to measure how happy your employees are to ask your employees for feedback. So you can look at things like surveys or open meetings or requests for honest feedback, if that could be a possibility. But of course that requires a transparent, honest and open culture where people feel free to share those kinds of things, and obviously that doesn't happen all the time. But if you're not quite there yet, there are other ways to monitor and measure employee sentiments and to identify the success and failure of wellness initiatives. So, of course, first off, you could track habits. So how many people are repeatedly taking part in wellness and wellbeing activities? Organisations can also include self-reported wellbeing metrics, such as whether or not the employees feel they are living and working with purpose, or how stable they are emotionally and financially. Also, things that most businesses will have access to will be workplace metrics like sick time used, turnover rates, the amount of overtime that's being used, any insurance data, so how many claims are being made through PMI, or if you have any EAP systems, that sort of thing. So, those metrics aren't just important for financial costs, but we need to think about the costs to the business of sick or otherwise unwell employees in the workforce. And Helen did talk earlier a little bit about that, and maybe presenteeism and so on isn't such a great thing. So this can all be tied back to business metrics and outcomes, which can prove the point to leadership about the benefits of a well workforce. We also need to think about business metrics like customer experience or sales statistics over a year, and tracking those in correlation with wellness can really, drive home, as a HR department, it can really drive home the importance of these initiatives to CFOs and CFOs and CEOs, so that they can see the impact of a healthy workforce on basically their bottom line. And sadly, that is, what a lot of businesses are overall, interested in, but it is very important. Just going to hand back off to Helen now. She can talk about how to spot mental health issues in the workplace.
Thanks, Jacqui. The next couple of slides I'm going to talk through are to do with mental illness in the workplace. So the first one is how to spot mental illness in the workplace. So in a lot of companies, it's still a bit of an elephant in the room. Employees can feel scared or reluctant to talk about it because they might feel like they're going to be discriminated against, while managers often shy away from the subject. They might fear that they're going to make matters worse or make a mistake or provoke legal consequences. So what I want to talk through first off are some ideas about how to spot mental illness in the workplace. So firstly, it's to talk about this with your line managers, to increase their knowledge. We're not experts, that we're not expecting line managers to be experts, but to talk about it openly in the workplace is really key. So to talk to your line managers about spotting the signs of mental illness, and that early intervention is best. So again, creating that environment where people feel that they can openly speak about mental illness or any other issues that they're experiencing. The other thing to look for are potential workplace triggers. So looking for distress across a range of mental illnesses and what triggers that there might be in the workplace. So employees might be working long hours and not taking breaks. They might have unrealistic expectations of themselves or of the work and setting unrealistic deadlines. They might be working in really high pressure environments. They might have a lack of control over their work or have unmanageable workloads. They might be working on their own, whether that be in silos just due to their work, or working from home, for example. And they might have negative relationships or poor communications throughout the workplace. And we've touched on a bit about burnout already. So I also wanted to delve a little bit deeper into, for employees that might experience burnout, what that might happen, what might that look like, when might that occur. So employees might expect too much from themselves, put too much pressure on themselves. They might fear that their work isn't good enough, that they might feel inadequate and incompetent, and they might feel underappreciated and that they aren't a good fit for their job. So in these sorts of situations, what should line managers do? And Jacqui and I have already touched on that this isn't just about working in an office or working, face-to-face with individuals. This is across the board in terms of working from home as well. So it's really important to look out for these and encourage the workforce to talk about these points. So some of the indicators for poor mental health, so some of the physical indicators might be fatigue, there might be headaches, appetite or weight changes, joint or back pain. There's lots and lots of physical attributes that could come forward through mental health. So that could be constantly feeling cold. There's quite an extensive list on the screen, so I'm just going to run through some of them. Some of them might be psychological, so feeling anxious or distressed, being really fearful, feeling low, mood changes, loss of motivation, difficulty relaxing. And some of them might be behavioural changes, so that might be increasing in smoking or drinking, being withdrawn. There might be some restlessness, working far longer hours than usual. Are there uncharacteristic errors that people might be having in the workplace? So there's lots and lots of indicators to poor mental health, and it's really important to create that environment where people feel that they can talk about these things. But often the change is noticeable for it not being typical behaviour for that employee. And of course, if one or more of these symptoms are observed, then we can't assume that there's going to be a mental health issue there. But it's good to check in and to see if your employees are okay, and to open that door for a conversation and to show the supportiveness of the line manager and of the business. Next slide, please. So some of the things I wanted to talk about next are how to improve mental health in the workplace. So what can you do? So if there is poor mental health is suspected, or if it's disclosed, it's really crucial that line managers facilitate an early conversation about the person's needs. So that's to identify and to implement appropriate support or adjustments. Jacqui's already mentioned before that they could come under the Equality Act, so it's really important that the business puts in place any reasonable adjustments for that person. But also looking at basic good people management skills. So if an individual doesn't trust their line manager, then they're unlikely to discuss a sensitive issue with you, such as mental health. So it's really important to create the culture that people want and are able to talk about these issues. This particular session is just too short to go through a breakdown of how to deal with these specific discussions, but of course Jacqui and I are happy to help at any time if there's a specific case or instance that you want to talk through with us. And then some of the other tips will be, like any health problem, most people prefer an honest and open inquiries over reluctance to address the issue. So often employees will feel more confident in speaking up. So a manager making the first move to an open dialogue can be key. And the Charity Mind has some good hints and tips on how to approach the subject. It's also to think about how managers are going to approach these discussions. So having phrased questions in a simple and open and non-judgmental way can often help the employee explain the points that they want to put across in their own words. Also to be prepared for some silences and to be patient. And managers should also explore how to address any difficulties which are work-related, which may in turn help them cope with any problems in any other areas of their lives. But remember, particularly with remote working environments, the impact of home life and work life and vice versa. If it's appropriate, managers should encourage the employees to seek advice and additional support from their GP as the first step, and ensure that they're aware of any support available from the company. So, for example, do you have any mental health first aiders? Is there a confidential employee assistance helpline? Maybe occupational health. There's different layers and different options for different companies. Next slide, please. And then on this section, I want to talk about how to prevent mental illness in the workplace. And Jacqui and I have spoken a lot about this throughout the session so far, and it will continue to be a theme going forward. But good communication and good people management skills do go a long way in preventing stress and poor mental health amongst employees. Also, it's really important to have a good induction programme for new employees coming on board. So starting a new role can be really stressful and an unsettling experience. And people are often given insufficient guidance about expectations, processes, and it can undermine people's confidence and could trigger problems or exacerbate existing symptoms. The other piece to look at is management style. So good line management can't exist in a vacuum. So senior management influence of how line managers see their roles and duties. And we also need to remember that line managers may also be suffering from mental health issues themselves and may need some support. Also look at guidelines and stress in the workplace. So use them within the organisation. And if you need any support or any additional information on this, then Jacqui and I are available to help. But also looking at building resilience. So focusing on building resilience and coping techniques in the workplace. So it can be a three-pronged approach. So looking at building individual resilience and team resilience, but also organisational resilience as well. And now I'm going to pass back to Jacqui for the next section.
Okay, so I'm conscious on time, so I'll try and whiz through this as quickly as possible. In terms of strategies that larger companies are implementing, the focal points are very much on physical health, so looking after health, fitness, diet, sleep and energy levels, so that employees approach challenges with zeal. Purposeful, so identifying what really matters to employees and connecting to that as much as possible in all that they do. Also mental, so managing mental choices and reactions to distractions, pressures, challenges, and adversity. And then emotional, so finding ways to feel positive and confidently face the challenges that life throws at them. There is a focus around breaking stigma on mental health. So from a cultural point of view, empowering people through education and raising awareness of mental health, so making mental health conversations commonplace. Leadership, so Helen touched on this briefly before around conversations and having good line manager support, but building awareness and capability on mental health support and encourage role modelling, so being able to encourage those open and transparent and meaningful conversations. And then also prevention, so providing access to self-help tools for individuals and teams. I'm going to whiz through to we've talked a bit about prevention, but I'm going to talk about a bit more about what Goodwill have been doing as well. So if we look at shifting focus from reactive to preventative measures, a lot of companies have been appointing mental health champions, so allowing employees to have peer-to-peer mental health conversations. And they have been planning for the future. So recognizing that with an aging population and workforce, in some markets, people might need to be able to learn new skills and relearn other skills. So helping employees to embrace change and to become more resilient. And again, Helen touched on resilience before. But what have small businesses been doing and what have Goodwill been doing? So we have made a push ourselves on having a wellbeing focus. So we have a benefits perk system. So I'm going to name drop Perkbox here, but there are other brands out there. So that also includes an EAP, a mindfulness platform and wellbeing platform. So employees can benefit from gym membership reductions, online exercise classes, financial wellbeing videos and so on. We also have a great life insurance, so that has a wellbeing platform attached to that. So that has access to counselling, an online GP, help to stop smoking, help with diet. We have a private medical insurance that includes mental health care. You can, get PMI memberships that also have gym perks as well. We also have a buddy system, so that encourages peer-to-peer support during probation period. We have an open door policy to talk about mental health and to encourage a more open culture. But we also have several trained mental health first aiders in the business. As a business, we also run company sessions, which are colleague-led mostly, which last around 30 minutes every few weeks, which focus on wellbeing. So we've had things like desk yoga and origami and bird watching. But then also we have had mini educational sessions on things like the menopause. So we had the Eva Peel that came in to speak to us about gynae cancers, and that was to the whole company. The the point is to bring colleagues together to do something restful or fun or educational. And, you know, it's great to see that fun can be had, but it's great to also see the questions that are triggered from a result of those sessions as well. We also have running club, we have desk yoga, we have office massages every now and again. We offer additional enhanced paid leave for things like holiday and sickness and family leave types, bereavement leave, emergency independence leave. We recognise that our employees do have commitments outside of work, and that's why we've introduced these things. We have many employees working on flexible working patterns to support those family commitments. We also offer 1 day of paid time off per year as a volunteering day for a charity, should the employee choose to do that. We've introduced a buy and sell holiday policy to reflect the time off that our employees need to take. We also have, as part of our hybrid working policy, a month to work from anywhere. We also have a social budget that allows us to arrange fun activities with our colleagues, and that's in each location, or we also bring the 2 offices together at least twice per year with some smaller events in between. And then also we want our people to succeed and grow. So we have a training budget where we cover approved costs for professional qualifications and professional memberships and developmental courses. We also have a career path where employees are scored on their skill set to be given a grade and level. But they also are very transparent on how they get to the next level, and they are given the development that they need. And then we also do recognise good work. So we have a system where every 3 months we ask our employees to submit a nomination for a colleague if they want to, where they feel that someone has gone above and beyond in their role. So we do feel that this recognition and career path do go towards employees being, you know, recognised and being seen, and that they have purpose. I'm not sure if Helen's dropped off, Nancy, has she?
Yeah, I think she's having some technical issues.
Okay.
Sure.
I'm just conscious on the time here, to be honest, because we've rolled over a little bit. So I'll just cover off Helen's parts really briefly. But yeah, effectively, we also need to think about financial well-being as well for our employees. So, you know, we aim to create an open and supportive workplace where managers and employees can discuss issues associated with financial well-being. I did just talk before about having some facilities as part of a well-being package with third parties that can help employees in that area. But effectively, the aim is to break down any stigma around that, and also the mental stress and pressure that comes with having financial burdens. So I'll just flick on quickly, Nancy. And then in terms of future changes, so there is, of course, the right to switch off, which is part of legislation. So this all comes in part with a mix of GDPR, but also as a result of the pandemic, and basically there not being that division between home life and working life. So there is a new right to disconnect and to protect workers from remote surveillance. There will be some further enhancements on sexual harassment coming in October. And of course, as part of that, it is necessary to provide bullying and harassment training and having a bullying and harassment policy. There is also flexible working legislation. Oh, good, Helen, you're back. There is also some flexible working legislation which has been passed recently, actually, on further protections around that, and employees being able to make 2 flexible working requests per year. There is going to be a review of carers leave coming up, where there will, at the moment, there is a requirement to allow official carers 1 week of leave, but it's not necessary to pay it at the moment. But we are expecting that may come in. There will be also further protections coming in on the menopause. So both Helen and I have briefly touched on menopause topics as part of our respective sections. But there will be a necessity in the future, or we are expecting that employers with more than 250 employees will be legally required to produce menopause action plans. And then we're also going to expect some reforms on sick pay coming, where there will be an expectation to pay statutory sick pay at least from day 1 of sickness, rather than the current day 4 fixture that we have at the moment. I am conscious that we've gone 8 minutes over time, so if there is any questions that anyone has, please do feel free to submit them. I haven't seen any in the chat. But yeah, you can reach out to Helen or I if you have any further questions. We'll be happy to walk you through.